and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, Justin Baker, co-host in studio. And on today's show, we're continuing our series on the top 10 players for every team throughout the National Hockey League. We have completed the Detroit Red Wings, Nashville Predators, New York Rangers, and the Anaheim Ducks. You can go back and listen to those in our last two episodes and find out who we ranked in the top 10 of those teams. On today's show, the St. Louis Blues and the Washington Capitals, as promised. And I'd say, as far as these two teams went, there's definitely probably some consensus at the top, but because these are both a little bit older teams, you know, we had the Ducks. Nobody's played 1,000 games for the Ducks, whereas some of these teams, you've got quite a few players played over 500 games, played over 800 games. So there's a little bit more to choose from, I'd say, in terms of these teams. So with the Capitals being around, I think since the mid-70s, right? 74, 75 was their first year.
That's correct. And
the worst year of all, the worst season of all time. I think they won 8 games. And the St. Louis Blues, whose first season was 1967-68. So with that said, let's start with the Washington Capitals. Ironically, I don't even think we did this on purpose, but it was just the two teams that have won the last 2 Stanley Cups. So we'll start with the Washington Capitals, and let's go into some just missed the Washington Capitals, because there were quite a few names that I considered before whittling it down to 10. I'm happy with my 10, but there was a few that I think some people may have on theirs, and some lists that I went out, you know, I did my research, and there were quite a few lists that had some of these players on them. So with that said, who's on your just missed?
Yeah, I think from my 9 and 10 to the few guys I have on my just missed, you could pretty much shuffle them at any point, and I would be totally happy with it.
Okay.
But I basically picked names out of a hat at that point and just really had to go with the gut feeling.
I'll actually say from 1 to 9,
yeah,
I'm sold on all the players on there. I wouldn't take any of them off there.
Okay.
My 10 was on a lot of lists, and ultimately the research I did, I kept putting them on as my 10. Felt like I couldn't keep them off, and all the rest of them, well, they're on my just miss list. I don't think they should be in this top 10. Like, I don't think I wouldn't switch any of these guys in for another guy. So
that's fair. Okay, so my just missed, I got Adam Oates, Scott Stevens, Braden Holtby, and Alex Semin.
Braden Holtby, not on the list.
Not on the list. Yeah.
I didn't even put Adam Oates on my list at all.
Fair enough.
Don't have him on my just missed. He was to me, he was nowhere close to making this list. But I mean, just missed is a
relative
subjective term. Yeah, it's relative. Yeah. So okay, my just missed Michael Pavanka, who's I think like 5th or 6th all time in scoring for the Caps. Just kind of on the team when not much was happening. Mike Ridley, Calle Johansson, maybe the longest tenured defenseman for the Capitals, was there for a long time, but just not productive enough.
Sure.
And then Dennis Maruk.
Yeah, I had a hard time pronouncing that name too.
I had him on my list. Maruk. He played 5 seasons, but he had a 50-goal season and a 60-goal season, and he has the record for most points in a season for the Capitals at 136 points. But he did it in 81-82, which I think that's the season Gretzky had 215 points. He had 200 at least. Well, we know that. So Gretzky's getting 200 something. The next, this guy has 136. It's all relative. I mean, granted, still probably a really nice season. Probably even in today's terms, probably a 90 to 100 point season. So still a nice season, but just not enough over time to get him in there. So, all right. With that said, your number 10, sir.
Number 10, a guy just made your just miss list, Michael Pavanka.
Michael Pavanka. Okay.
Yeah. Looking at the numbers, it's kind of hard to ignore when you're top 5 all time on a franchise list.
Absolutely.
And not that I think he was worth going any higher, but again, the production was there, and he was a lifetime. I mean,
yeah,
he was a lifer basically.
From 86 to 99, he was.
I think 13 seasons it was.
Yes,
yeah.
But my one of my knocks on him was the fact that he played really 2 full seasons. I guess you could say 3. What's a full season? How many games do you have to play to say it was a full season? Like, obviously, if you miss 2 games, it's still a full season.
Sure.
Miss 5 games, is it a full season?
I think if you get 75 or more, it's full
75
season, in
or
my
more.
opinion.
So he did 75 or more 4 times.
Yeah, he was injured a lot, for sure.
And, there was
the one lockout
94,
year,
95, he played 46, and that was a lockout year. But he played 73, 54, 33, 36 towards the end of his career. So not always healthy.
Sure. Yeah, and maybe, again, this is why he's a guy that could have easily been swapped out with Holtby or Semin or something, in my opinion. But just got the luck of the draw to come in at number 10, just because, again, top 5 in
Had a
franchise scoring.
12.3% shooting. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
599 points. Couldn't find number 600. So
That's always a bummer.
Yeah, he's... the other reason I didn't have him on there, like if we're going all time and everything, it's... he did only score 181 goals in 825 games. So that was my little bit of a knock on him. He's and he's a center. So he's dishing it off to, at the time, Peter Bondra, he was playing with a lot. And so I think he was playing with some good players.
Maybe that's why his shooting percentage is so high.
Probably true. My number 10 is a defenseman, and it is Kevin Hatcher.
Ooh, okay.
Kevin Hatcher. There was an explanation for that sold me. It was the fact that he was on this team. The whole time he was on the team, they never missed the playoffs. Not
Interesting.
once. And
That's
me,
Nick Lidstrom-esque.
to me, that says something about a guy. Now, obviously, one player, he's not the reason they made or missed the playoffs, but he's on quite a few decently successful teams. I mean, he was on the Capitals from 85, 86 until 93, 94, and they made the playoffs in all those years. So
Something to tip your cap at, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, he's probably, in terms of talent, one of the better defensemen. He actually played on Team USA in the World Cup in '96, that team that won the gold medal. So,
Wow.
obviously good enough to make an international team that year. By the time the Olympics rolled around, I don't know if he played on actually he might have played on Team USA in the Olympics in '98, but that team didn't really do a whole lot.
No.
Yeah. The big ice, that was the problem in Nagano. Okay, you're number 9.
Number 9, Olaf Kolzig.
So
Ole the goalie.
So there's your goalie.
Yes,
right?
there's my goalie.
Is he your only goalie that made the list?
He is the only goalie.
Okay.
If Braden Holtby's not on this list, it's got to be
301 wins.
Yeah, franchise leader. But
Yeah.
that if Holtby has like an amazing year, yeah, he'll pass that. But that depends on if he re-signs.
107 penalty minutes.
Yeah, that's
That's funny. I just noticed that.
yeah, I didn't even pay attention to that. So,
But he played 711 games. I mean, that in and of itself, I mean, you have to be on the list. I mean, how many goaltenders, even for their entire career, play 711 games? He's got to be somewhere on the top 25 of all time
7
games played.
straight seasons of 60-plus games.
Yeah, crazy. And that's back when, Broder was playing 75 games,
Right.
70, 76 games a
Yeah,
year.
73, 72, 71, and 3 seasons in a row. And the late 90s, too, nonetheless. Not early 90s, just crazy.
And he was on some bad teams, so some of his stats.
But he was
are
also
a little
on the
less, but
Stanley Cup team.
He was on the they went to the finals.
Yeah, they went to the
Didn't win
finals. Right,
Stanley Cup.
right.
Yeah. In 98
Against the Wings.
when they got
Yeah.
swept by the Wings. And he beat Dominik Hasek. And I wonder if Dominik Hasek, if the Sabres had found a way to win that 98 Stanley Cup final would have been a lot harder for the Red Wings.
It really was.
I don't think they would have swept the Sabres.
Yeah, also a Vezina winner, too. Most people forget Kolzig did win a Vezina in 2000.
He did win a Vezina trophy. Yes, he had a fantastic season that year. Unfortunately, I don't think that the Capitals did a lot,
anything
that year. But yeah, he played 72 games that year. Or sorry, he won it in 2000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he played 73 games, 2.24 goals against average, and a 917 save percentage. Which you'll look at that and you're like, he won the Vezina with those numbers. But I don't think that
4,300 shots against. Just ridiculous.
And you know what? They lost in 5 in the first round, and he had a 845 save percentage
Yeah, I know.
in the playoffs. Pretty.
He was tired.
It was the Bobrovsky factor right there. Win the Vezina, but stink it up in the playoffs. Okay, well, my number 9 is, my guess is that you have him a little higher on your list, but it's Dale Hunter.
He's number 8 on my list.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So pretty darn close. I have him here. He's a fifth highest scorer. 2,003 penalty minutes.
I chuckled.
Sweet mother of God. In 872 games. I mean, we know Dale Hunter is just...
He's a brute.
Yes. But, I mean, he's not higher on this list. There's a lot of people that... I saw people have him higher on their list than Nicholas Backstrom. I saw people say they would rather have Hunter as a center than Backstrom. I said,
I don't...
Now, maybe in 1991... You might say that, but he definitely has to be on this list. I believe he was the captain of the Capitals for a minute there too. So he was the captain when they went to the finals in '98. So
he's just a fan favorite, and I think that's why you see him higher.
72 of his 181 goals were on the power play.
Yeah.
He was a power play guy, and
he was one of those net front guys. I'm sure.
Yep. He definitely was. He scored the game-winning goal in Game 7 OT against Philadelphia, I think in '98. It was like the first or second round, and that's a huge goal. And then I think it was him. He scored this. If I'm wrong, tweet at me. I have this memory. I think it's Dale Hunter. It was against the Sabres in Game 7 in that conference finals in '98, and he got the puck down at Buffalo's end, and he just sat in front of the empty net and didn't move.
Oh, right.
And waited for guys to come and then put it in. And I remember the broadcaster saying, "Oh, they should have blown the whistle. He's not advancing the puck, so they should have blown the whistle there." It was like, why? Why can't he stand there? Who cares if he doesn't shoot? It makes no difference. But yeah, that was goofy. So, I mean, I'd say the only guy who has a chance to catch Dale Hunter in the penalty minutes is Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson has 934 penalty minutes in 454 games.
Dang.
He's coming. He's coming for him. So all he has to do...
He's got the contract now
all he
to
has
sit
to
around.
do is,
Be himself.
slice some people in the head and smack around. Yeah, he'll find it. Amazingly enough, the Capitals have 5 players who have more than 1,000 penalty minutes all time. And one of them is coming up on my list. Okay, so your number 8 is Dale Hunter.
It is.
Any reason why Hunter is higher than Kolzig?
Again, I think Kolzig, with the lack of success in the playoffs, minus he did have a couple decent seasons, but
yeah, but Hunter did too.
I know, but I think again, it comes down to just, I guess, he was more of like a fan favorite, a guy who just
Hunter.
leadership, and you generally like watching that guy play hockey. I didn't really enjoy watching Kolzig that much. It was just like, okay, great. Minus the one Vezina year, I was just...
He was he was pretty acrobatic.
He was steady to me, but...
Well, my number 8 is a guy that missed your list, and that is Scott Stevens, the guy who's number 2 all-time in penalty minutes, who had 1,628 penalty minutes in 601 games for the Caps. I actually didn't realize that Scott Stevens played for the Capitals for this long.
Right. I initially think of New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, 600. Well, and I knew he was on the Capitals. He was on the Blues for a minute.
Right.
Like
for a quick second.
Yeah, and he was actually their captain.
Was he really? Yeah. I didn't realize that.
and then he went to the Devils, and obviously that's where he had his long-term success. But I mean, still, he actually was decent offensively, 429 points in 601 games.
Yeah,
so
0.714 points per game for a defenseman is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I mean, 8 seasons with the Capitals. So it was a lot longer. And then the one random season with the Blues and then to New Jersey. He actually had a 78-point season in 93-94 with the Devils. Wow. Yeah, no idea.
Yeah, he's not known for his offensive production.
18 goals.
That's pretty good.
That's a darn good season. And he never had more than 9 goals again.
Wow.
He had 18 goals.
He had 21 with Washington one season.
Oh, he did, yeah. Yeah, so and 221 penalty minutes to boot. Unreal.
Well, that was a different time.
So fun. Yeah, just so fun, though. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, Scott Stevens, obviously, he's a phenomenal defenseman. And the whole time, he was with the Capitals. They were in the playoffs. So, I mean, you're looking like you've got Kevin Hatcher and Scott Stevens on the blue line, along with, this is like, I think Rod Langway was there at this time as well, who is hopefully on your list later on.
You say hopefully?
Maybe, yeah, hopefully he's on your list. But yeah, they actually had a very good defense, and you wouldn't maybe look back and go, oh, the Capitals and their stalwart defense in the 80s, because it was the 80s. But I mean, Scott Stevens, Kevin Hatcher, and Rod Langway. Rod Langway was there from 82-83 until 92-93. So solid defensive core there for the Capitals for a while. Let's go with your number 7.
You said his name, Mr. Langway.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
There he is.
Rod Langway. He won the Norris Trophy in 82-83.
I believe so.
And definitely not a guy known for his offensive prowess. Only 25 goals in 726 games. They actually had Brooks Orpik before they had Brooks Orpik.
Yeah, he had more than 10 goals in one season in his career.
I wonder if Brooks Orpik had played in 1982, he might have won the Norris.
Hey, there you go.
He would have been. Yeah, you're right. He had one 11-goal season. The rest of the time,
he got close in 84 with 9, but
he actually had several 0 and 1 goal seasons, which is hard to do.
That's Tobias Reeder-esque right there.
Yeah, but when your shooting percentage is 2% and you only scored 1 goal, that means you shot the puck 50 times all year. That like much. Every other game you're getting a shot on goal, essentially. So, yeah, definitely known for his defensive abilities, but a guy winning the Norris Trophy who was taken 36th overall in 1977 by the Canadiens. So he did win a Stanley Cup, but just with the Montreal Canadiens. He's a little higher on my list. My number 7 is a guy who missed your list entirely, and I'm actually quite shocked that he missed your list, since he is the only goaltender to win the Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals. Also is only 44 wins away from the all-time leader in wins, who is Olaf Kolzig, but has done it in almost, he's played almost 300 less games, right, and is only 44 wins away.
It's impressive.
So some different kind of success. Has the same amount of shutouts too. So 300 less games, same amount of shutouts. I still have Olaf Kolzig higher than Holtby on this list.
Okay.
But I couldn't make this list without both those goalies on there. Those guys are...
That's fair.
If you think of the Capitals in the 90s and early 2000s, you think of Olaf Kolzig.
Sure.
No goalie deserves to be on a list in the 80s. There's just not... like Grant Fuhr is... How many goalies are in the Hall of Fame that played in the 80s? Grant Fuhr.
Barrasso? Wait.
Is Tom Barrasso in the Hall of Fame?
Is he? That's a good question. I should know this. I'm embarrassed. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, the Islanders, Billy Smith is in there.
Yep.
And he did most of his work like really early 80s. He's in there, but there aren't very many goalies that, you're like, yes, he must be in the Hall of Fame. Patrick Waugh, but I would say Patrick Waugh is more in the Hall of Fame for what he did in the 90s and less than what he did in the 80s. I'm thinking like somebody who played all the way through the 80s. All right, fine.
That'd be tough.
We'll find those names.
Tweet it.
So Braden Holtby is my number 7, and I'll just or my number 8. Sorry, my number 7 is Olaf Kolzig.
Okay.
So I had them back to back. You could flip them. I think probably when all is said and done, Braden Holtby will be higher on this list. I got to imagine he'll be on your list maybe in a couple years.
Maybe a year.
I can't believe he's not on your list.
Like I told you, 9 and 10. And my just miss, you could flip any one of those guys. I had such a hard time because I literally, don't get me wrong, I like Braden Holtby and I think he's great, but I think he's also had the luxury. It's kind of like a Chris Osgood situation. He's played on some really good teams in front of him.
Yeah, but he was on some teams that weren't good defensively. And remember, like he was the reason why they had some success. And I would say that he's the reason why they won the Cup.
He's the reason they got to the Cup, maybe in a couple of those rounds. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he was the reason they won the cup.
I mean, remember they had started. What's his name? Gosh, I can't remember. Grubauer. They had started him, and he crapped the bed the first two games.
Franchise leader in goals against average and save percentage.
Yeah, there you go. Nice. Okay, let's get your number. What are we in a 7?
I'm on number 6.
You're on number 6.
Yeah, number 6 for me, Sergei Gonchar.
Sergei Gonchar. Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, Gonchar is not on my list.
That's okay. Well, I mean, I'm not upset about that, but I am a little bit.
So Gonchar is on your. Yeah, I mean, Gonchar he's a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
In fairness, it's of course not a knock on him. Yeah, he played there at the beginning of his career.
Yeah, he did. He had a lot of, just 50, 60-point seasons just rolling through, up until 2004. And then he was dealt to Boston for just a quick stint. And then went to the Penguins, where he had some successful runs, getting some cups and that sort of stuff. But to me, this is a guy who really showed up offensively. I think I also toyed about putting Mike Green on this list too, just because, again, when we talk about offensive defensemen, I think in Washington, I think of Gonchar and Mike Green. Mike Green, of course, he had maybe 4 or 5 good seasons and took a nosedive, and then kind of came back around and then eventually went to Detroit. But Gonchar, I mean, he was just steady the whole way through, and he played on some mediocre Washington teams after those cup runs, or in '98 the cup run, and then they kind of bottomed out a little bit. They didn't really have much success after that, and
they made it to the 3rd round once.
Yeah.
Oh, they made it to the finals. Sorry.
Right.
When he was there in '98.
Right. And so
they didn't make it out of the first round any other year that he was there.
No, and I don't think that's any knock on him.
Yeah,
no,
that's not his fault.
Again, he continued to have success on these mediocre teams. Whereas, you put him on another superstar team in the, late 90s like Dallas or something, and he'd probably be a 70-point player all day long.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't, I actually, the funny thing is I recognize, I was like, oh, Sergei Gonchar. Yeah, he played for the Capitals. And I just kind of didn't consider him for the list, but probably should have. That's probably a goof on my part. But
no, I mean he's 14th all time in terms of scoring for
fourth all time for defensemen.
Well, actually,
which first all time is Calle Janssen, who missed my list entirely. Former Toronto Maple Leaf, by the way.
Right.
He did get traded to Maple Leafs right at the end there. But I just, I guess I would probably have him on my just missed though.
Okay. Yeah, that's
he
fair.
should be on there, and I didn't talk about him there. My number 6 is. Oh, I said my number 6 is Olaf Kolzig. I'll go to my number 5.
Let's do it.
It's Nicholas Backstrom.
Okay.
Nicholas Backstrom.
He's a little higher on my list.
Yeah, and that's fair. I thought about it, and the more I toyed with this, I said Nicholas Backstrom is truly a product of Alex Ovechkin. I think we know where he'll end up being on this list, Ovechkin. And if you get to be his center, of course you're going to benefit from him getting the puck from you and putting it. Which in basically in 900 games, he's got 231 goals. So nothing crazy to write home about in terms of goals. Which he's still 4th all time in goals for the Caps.
I mean, but let me make this argument though to you. When you talk about like guys that benefit from other players, right? We talk about, for example, Jari Kurri and Wayne Gretzky, right? Jari Kurri, you could easily
still a Hall
put
of
him
Fame player, yeah.
Yeah. So again, I still think the same of Backstrom.
Yes.
But maybe again,
I'm not saying that Backstrom isn't.
No, of course. I mean, he just made your top 5.
He is the second best player in the last 15 years to play for the Capitals.
Right.
No knock on that. I just think when I look at different eras too, and I go, okay, Ovechkin's the best player right now. Now, who else was? I don't think Backstrom has ever been the best player on the Capitals. So I don't think I can have him be higher than other guys who are also the best player for a long time. Like, of course, you're going to have, they had some garbage seasons. So the best player from 1974, I'm not going to have him on this list because it's pretty meaningless. But I have him at number 5 because I think the 4 guys that I have ahead of him were the best player on their team at one point and had a more of an impact on their team than he does.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. My number 5 is a guy who maybe didn't even make your list. However, I do think he's continually getting better. I think he is a superstar, just overlooked a lot of times. He's a current defenseman for the Washington Capitals, John Carlson.
Okay.
Yeah, I love his game. I love what he's been super steady on the blue line since he came in and started playing the full season there in 2010-11, and has provided plenty of offensive production. Continues to do so. I mean, and it just keeps getting better. And I think he's going to keep going, and eventually he'll end up being the highest scoring defenseman for a team.
Yeah, if he plays out the length of his contract there, he'll definitely rise on
and
my
I think
list
most people might say, why is he at number 5? And I think maybe it's slightly because I do think, again, he's going to end up being the best defenseman ever played for this franchise, and maybe that's why he went a little higher.
You think that he'll be better? I mean, then he needs to win some Norris trophies or something.
I don't even think he needs to win
Rod
a Norris.
Langway has won one. Scott Stevens. I mean, you've got Hall of Fame defensemen that play for this team.
Not hating on it, but I think in terms of longevity and overall production, I think it'll outweigh what those other guys, have done, because those guys didn't really play their whole careers, and I think Carlson will be a lifer, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting. Carlson, he had 70 points, right?
70 points last season, 68 before
70,
that.
68, and he's played 688 games and has 403 points. And right now he's fifth. He's fifth all time. So yeah, he'll probably by the end of this year, there's a good chance that he'll be the leading scorer,
right,
in Caps history. So yeah, didn't have him on my list, but there's just. Again, this is where this makes it more fun when it's a team that has a lot of good players who have played for them.
Yeah, not a lot of great names, but just a lot of really good players.
A lot of really, so you've got a lot of play as to where guys end up. My number 4 is a guy who never had less than 68 points in a season for the Washington Capitals. He's the 4th all-time scorer, had more than a point per game, and that is the speedy winger Mike Gartner.
Mike Gartner. He is my number 4. Yeah. So
all right. Well,
there you go.
End up right there. Mike. Yep. 789 points, 758 games. I believe he has the record for most consecutive 30-goal seasons.
It's impressive.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And he was injured one year, so I guess they maybe don't count that. He was injured for like 2 years. He only played 56 games and then 13 in 88, 89. And then he had 30, and so that's probably the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight 30-goal seasons, and then had the other one. And basically, whenever he played a full season, he was scoring more than 30 goals. So
pretty impressive. And he had a little stint as a coach too for the Caps.
He did.
Yeah,
he did. That's right. And he's kind of still known as like he was the fastest player at that time. I mean, he's probably now, if he played, he would still be one of the fastest guys on the ice. But I think he was so much faster than everyone else in his era. I more remember what my dad told me about him, and he always was just, dude, this guy is just, he's just lightning. Like you watch him and he blows past guys, which you don't see too many guys blow past people anymore.
Connor McDavid.
Yeah. And I think that's, in terms of the speed comparison to him compared to the rest of the field, I think they're pretty on par.
That's impressive.
He's got to be one of the underrated goal scorers of all time. I mean, the guy had 708 goals in his career.
Yeah,
in 1,400 games.
There's only a handful of guys that get 700.
Yeah, he basically averaged a goal every other game over the course of over 1,400 games. That's impressive. Okay, you're number 3.
Number 3, Nicholas Backstrom.
Okay, there he is.
Yeah. Again, we kind of talked about him a little bit, and so again, I still think he is a very productive guy. Even without Ovechkin, and I think we're going to start maybe seeing how productive he can be. Granted, he is a little bit into his 30s, so maybe the production won't be there without Ovechkin as much. But
playing with Kuznetsov a little bit more.
He's going to get to play with Kuzi. At some point, we'll probably still see Backstrom line up next to Ovi anyways this season. But, yeah, he's still super productive guy, still a 70-point guy. And what's the hate about that? I mean, he even has a 100-point season to his name. Not many guys can say that. So
that is true, especially in this era. Yeah, that's very, very rare. I didn't realize Kevin Hatcher was actually the captain of the Washington Capitals
Really?
in 92-93 and 93-94.
Yeah, I didn't realize that
Until
either.
Dale Hunter took over.
Impressive.
My number 3 is Peter Bondra.
Okay, he's number 2 for me.
Okay, he's number 2. All right. So Peter Bondra, third all-time scorer for the Washington Capitals, 961 games. He had 825 points, an impressive 472 goals over that time as well. And we're talking about a guy who really played the majority of his career in an era where goal scoring was down. I mean,
He managed 52 one year.
52 and 97, 98. Yeah. I mean, even in 2000, 2001, and I think it was it that year, 2000, 2001. What year was it? No, it was 2003 is when like the top goal scorer had 41 goals, right?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was always towards the top. I mean, in 2000, 2001, the only guys who scored more goals than him, Jaromir Jagr, Joe Sakic, Pavel Bure. So, I mean, you're talking about an elite player. And so definitely deserving to be up there in the top 3 somewhere in a Capitals list. And really, he was their best player when they went to the finals.
Yeah. Surprisingly, though, that year he had 52 goals. He only finished 6th in Hart voting.
Huh.
That tells you anything. I mean, it's just when scoring's down, it's funny to me that
was that year. So he had 52 goals. That was 52, 95, 96. I want to say Mario Lemieux had...
No, that was 97, 98 when he got 6th in Hart voting. I'm sorry, the year they went to the... Yeah.
Yeah, Peter Bondra in 95, 96, only 3 guys ahead of him scored more goals again. This time it was Mogilny, Jagr, Lemieux. Lemieux only had 69 goals.
Only.
In 70 games.
That's crazy.
Although Bondra had 52 and 67.
Dang.
I mean, the guy was lights out. He just didn't put up the assists. So he obviously didn't have the guys around.
Didn't have anybody, yeah.
I mean, he had 52 goals, only 28 assists. Lemieux had 92 assists.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Insane. Okay, so my number 2 is Rod Langway.
Okay. A little further down my list.
The only Norris Trophy winner for the Capitals is my number 2. And I think the fact that he played, he was just an absolutely dominant defenseman, but in such a different way. We tend to look at defensemen who can put up big points. He obviously wasn't a big point producer, but he was just an absolute rock. And he's probably one of the few guys who has won the Norris Trophy
just being a defenseman.
For not at all his ability to score.
Right.
And I can appreciate that. He also, I mean, for a guy who played all the way through the 80s when penalty minutes were sky high, he only had 500 penalty minutes in 726 games. So, I mean, it definitely kept it responsible. I mean, those guys were basically, you were required to get in some kind of fight somewhere along the line. But I just think also the fact that he was their captain from 82-83 season until 92-93. So a 10-year captain. That's not something to just ignore. Obviously, he was somebody who had more than just the ability to play. Guys were looking to him.
Oh yeah, he was a leader.
I mean, he developed freaking Scott Stevens, and look who, I mean, there's got to be something to be said about that as well. Good defensemen coming through there, and all of them leaving better defensemen. So that's our number 2. Number 1's Alex Ovechkin. Well, it's going to the St. Louis Blues.
Oh, I had Sergei Fedorov. I'm sorry, we had another Russian.
Well, I had Jaromir Jagr.
Oh shit!
I thought about it. Putting
it for
Jagr? A second, just for fun,
Yeah, Obi, what's there that hasn't already been said about this guy? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
he's the leader in every statistical category, pretty much.
Every single one, even
maybe except for assists. I think Backstrom has him beat.
Assists is Backstrom, 642 to 553.
But Ovi is just
destroying
him.
He's got
everybody in points.
90 less assists, but only 450 more goals. 658 goals in 1,084.
I can't wait to see him break 700 this year.
Over 1,200 points. Yeah, I mean, he needs a 42 goal season.
That's possible.
It's gonna be tight. I think it'll be tight. Like it's gonna come down to, it's gonna be March, maybe even April when he's there. I mean, you have to think that at some point this guy. I mean, he's a year older than I am, so he's 34. He'll be 34 this year. If he's not 34 already, I don't know when his birthday is. Sorry, I forget when his birthday is. But
who cares?
Yeah, who cares? So, I mean, you gotta think the guy's gonna start to slow down a little bit.
We thought he was gonna be last year. He put up 51,
but goal scoring's going up.
Absolutely,
right? So he has a chance to
49, 51 the last 2 years. There's no reason to not think he can do 45.
Will he be the all-time leader in goals by the end of his career?
That's so tough to say.
If he doesn't pussy out and goes home and it says, "Well, what I played Russia," he could beat it.
He got to in 2013.
I think Yager could have beaten it if he had just kept playing.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. That's going to be real tough.
If he hadn't left,
He's got to keep it up, and I think his last 6 seasons, he's got to do 30 goals each season or something like that to get there.
Yeah, right. Well, he has to get 892, and he's at 658, which means he needs another 224 goals to tie. 224 goals to tie. 30 times 6, that'd be 180. So really, you need like 5 seasons of 30 goals, and he'd be close. And he'd be close. So he's still got a little ways to go. Okay. Anything else to be said about Ovechkin, or can we? And the only Washington Capitals captain to win the Stanley Cup.
Very true.
St. Louis Blues. Let's do it.
Let's go. Just missed. Who you got?
Just missed. I have Keith Tkachuk, Brendan Shanahan, Adam Oates, a guy who made your Capitals list, and Barclay Prager.
Oh,
who
that name, you don't hear that often.
Yeah, he was in my research. It was he was the defenseman for the St. Louis Blues when they first came out. When they first became a team, and he was there for 10 years or so. And so I thought appropriate to at least list his name on here. They did go to a couple Stanley Cup finals with him, and so just thought I'd toss his name in there.
It's respectful. Okay, well, I got pretty much most of the same guys you did. Tkachuk, Shanny, Oates, they're all on there. I also got, I had a couple other guys because they had a lot of guys at the bottom of this list for me that, again, same as the Capitals, maybe a little bit interchangeable. Also, Alexander Steen made my just miss list, which I had a hard time really keeping him off just because he's the longevity with this team he's had and the consistent production that he's given is. The
question is, did you include any St. Louis Eagles on this list?
I wanted to, but no.
They had one season in 34-35. Their leading goal scorer was Carl Voss, who had 31 points in 48 games, 13 goals. Sid Howe, I don't know if he's related to Gordy, but he had 14 goals, led the team in goals. So there you go. There's a little history lesson. St. Louis had a random team for 1 year in 1934.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's go right to your 10.
Number 10, Vladdy Tarasenko.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if he even made your list, but
he's a little higher on my list.
Yeah. I think this is a guy who I could have put higher on here, but there's just been something about him. He reminds me of Philip Forsberg in the fact that I want more out of him every time I see him play. Like Tarasenko has these patches where he's just super hot on fire. He's just one of the best players on the ice, and then he'll go cold for a little bit. Not necessarily the case with Philip Forsberg, but I think he's still capable of so much more for this team. I mean, granted, he is up there in terms of all-time goal scorers for this team. I think he's number 5, maybe.
5th, yeah.
Fifth.
And he'll probably within, if he's there in 3 or 4 years, it's likely he'll be at number 2.
Yeah.
Fairly, like 4 years, I'd say. He's 140 goals off of number 2.
Yeah, so he's getting there.
You got to think he'll probably be there. I mean, you never know. 4 years is a long time in hockey.
He's locked in, and this guy he's a phenomenal talent. So hopefully we get to see a little bit more out of him.
Agreed. My number 10 probably is not on your list because he's only played one full season for this team.
Please say it.
It's not Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky did not play a full season.
That's true.
I think he played 28 games or 23 games or something. It is Ryan O'Reilly.
Wow.
He's my number 10. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy. He is the reason they won the Stanley Cup, not just with his performance in the playoffs, but his leadership in the locker room. And his that trade is the I'll say the greatest trade the Blues have ever made
That's fair to
because
say.
of what it did.
Yeah.
They won this. They would not have won the Stanley Cup without Ryan O'Reilly. Like hands down, wouldn't have done it. And
absolutely
so
not.
to me, he hasn't been there long enough to be higher on this list. But I'll say, he may not be the best player to ever play for them. He may be the most important.
Wow. Yeah, I think in a year or two, he'll probably make my list. But
he
right now,
may be looked back as the like his banner. Even if let's say he plays there like 3 years, there'll be people who say we need to raise his jersey to the sky here because of what he did.
that's ballsy. I love Ryan O'Reilly, and he might make my top, 15 centerman, 10 centerman, but
Top 10.
But man, that's ballsy to put him top 10 on this list already.
Yep. He's already
at the
done.
table.
He's already done more than anybody else on this list in terms of playoff success.
Well, won't argue with you there.
Other than like Tarasenko, of course, also won the cup. Other guys also won the cup, but no one else has a Conn Smythe trophy.
Oh, there you go.
He had, and let's say he does nothing else, he still had the best 24 games in the history of the St. Louis Blues because they mattered the most.
That is a hard thing to argue against.
Who's your number 9?
Pavel Dimitra.
Okay, yeah, Pavel Dimitra.
I'm sure he's probably a little high on your
Just
list.
a pinch higher on my list.
Just a pinch. Okay, yeah. He number 5 all times in terms of points. He was
Almost
1 point
point
away
per game.
from being a point a game player.
Yeah.
Which to me would just irritate the crap out of me, and I would try my damnedest to fix that, but a little too late for that. Not even 500 game played, and I think maybe that's why he didn't go higher on my list. But quality guy, like him. You can't hate him.
No.
Don't argue with this.
And was one of the guys who died in that plane crash in Russia.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Another reason, he's also on my list, a little bit higher, but only 160 penalty minutes in 500 games.
Yeah, that's impressive.
For a guy, I mean, he was like a center right wing. He played center, but he also played the wing. But for a guy who was a two-way centerman, you're talking about a position. You're playing against other teams' best players. Hard not to take a lot of penalties, and he didn't do it. So, I'll give you that on Dimitra. My number 9 is Gary Unger. He is the 4th all-time scorer for the St. Louis Blues, and he's 575 points in 662 games. I obviously did not watch him play, but he played for the Blues from 1970 to 1979. I just from what I could gather, he was somebody who was very important to them in the 70s, and I felt like there needed to be somebody on this list from an era that I didn't watch. And he just kind of seems like the obvious one, a guy who was able to put up big points for them.
Yeah,
so.
He made my list at number 8. So
Okay.
I'm right there with you. I think, again, the longevity, he was there early on in this franchise's history, and he was very productive, so can't hate him.
Yep, can't hate him at all. All right.
So you're number 8.
My number 8 is a goaltender.
Ooh.
It is Cujo. Curtis Joseph.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
I wasn't sure whether or not to include him on here. Didn't really have a lot of playoff success, but really he won. I mean, he played 280 games for them. I truly believe that he's the best goalie to ever play for the St. Louis Blues. I don't think there's a better goalie to play for them.
In terms of just overall career?
Overall talent, but he also played enough games. I mean, he's second most games as a goaltender for the St. Louis Blues. The only guy to play more is Mike Liut.
Yeah.
And he won 14 more games than him in 65 less games. So just not. He played in the 80s when things were everything was going in. It was nobody's fault. But yeah, Curtis Joseph, to me, I've watched him. He's a guy who always blew my mind with his athleticism, and I think probably the best goaltender to never win a cup. At least from if we take away
retired, or
if we take away the current era.
Okay.
Yes, in terms of retired guy, I think he's probably the most talented goaltender to never win the cup. Which he does have. He has 454 wins. I think he has the most wins for a goaltender to never win the cup.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, that's fair. All right, moving on.
You're number 7.
Number 7, Christopher Pronger.
Chris Prong?
Yeah, no, it's Christopher. Get it right.
Christopher, sorry.
Yeah.
He was the captain for 5 years. For the
Yeah,
Blues.
he was a force on the blue line. Him and Al McInnes in
Him
the
and Al.
'90s, man, they were quite the tandem. Anyways, yeah, won the Hart, won the Norris, was
In the
first
same
team
year.
All-Star. Yeah, you don't. How many defensemen can do that? Can say they've
Defensemen
done
don't
that?
win the Hart.
No, they don't.
They don't win the
So-
Hart. They just win the Norris.
Yeah, super impressive, and especially on a 52-point season, or I'm sorry, a 62-point season, and only 79 games, so not even a point per game production. But the sheer fact that he was able to do that with those kind of point totals is very impressive. And if you ever got a chance to watch him, you know what a force he was on the blue line. He was he smashed guys back there too, and so he kind of reminded me a little bit of Shea Weber-esque. They're kind of similar in the way they play the game. I think that physicality and size and. Yeah, he was great. So for me, he's number 5.
And they made it past the first round 5 times with him as a Blue. So
Yeah.
pretty good. He actually was there the year that Gretzky was there
Yeah,
for
unfortunately.
a minute there. Okay, he's a little bit higher on my list, but Pavel Demitra is my 7.
Okay.
I have him a little bit higher, especially considering the fact that he wasn't their captain, but it was Chris Pronger and Al McInnes, and you had like Dallas Drake. You kind of had these older guys, and you had Eric Brewer, who was their captain for a little bit. And I'm thinking, all right, yeah, they made particular guys captains, and I think he was a leader in terms of the forwards. He always had the A, and so it is funny the St. Louis Blues made Wayne Gretzky their captain in 95-96.
Yeah, I always found that funny.
Very
Like,
strange. Brett Hull, Wayne Gretzky, and Shane Corson were all captains that year.
yeah, now we're in the era where guys put C's on people's chests just because of their
Who they were.
Yeah, that was what they did, who they were, right? And now they're doing it because of who they're going to be, and they're hoping to keep these superstars around, and that's why they do it. I mean, that's why they did it with Landeskog when he was so young. I couldn't believe they freaking put a C. I still can't believe he's the captain of that team. I mean, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
this is McKinnon's team. Let's just face it. But anyways, that's a whole
Agreed.
other argument. So
You're number 6.
number 6, a goaltender, Mike Liut.
Oh, you have him on your list.
I do, yeah. There's one season in particular that put him on this list for me because I felt there had to be one goalie on here, and Cujo just, to me, again, the productivity was there. He was a fantastic goaltender for this team. Maybe not the flashiest of stats, but Mike Liut, during the course of his career, obviously he is the all-time wins leader. But I think it was, I can't remember the season. I'm going to look it up here. I think it was 80-81. He won the Pearson Trophy, which is now the Ted Lindsay Award. For those who don't know, you're voted on by the players as the MVP of the league in a year where Wayne Gretzky came in and just destroyed the league in terms of points. But this guy still managed to steal that away from the players' votes.
Interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I didn't know
And
that.
so for me, that was just because that was an era where St. Louis was just very mediocre, weren't very good. I mean, God, this guy had an .894 save percentage that year, but that's just how dominant he was. For
Well,
that
there
team.
also, that year, I believe there was an average of around 8 goals a game.
Right.
I think is what the average
Yeah,
is.
and he finished second in the Hart voting that year, and so he was
Crazy.
he was
Okay.
a good goaltender for this team. So
That's fair. I don't have him on my list, but that's an interesting little thing. I
tidbit.
have Tarasenko at 6.
okay,
I'm thinking he's probably, in terms of goal scorers for the St. Louis Blues. I mean, there's some obvious players who are better all time, but he definitely in terms of this era has been their best goal scorer probably in the last 20 years, and so I gotta have him pretty high up on my list, and he's not done yet.
that's fair to say. Yeah, and again, not done yet, which is what I like. Number 5. So for me or you,
Brian Suter is my number 5.
same.
1,786 penalty minutes in 779 games, but also 636 points over that span. And and he was the captain of the Blues from 1979 until 1988.
Again, those mediocre Blues teams, but the leadership was there, which is great. And I think he ranks third all times in terms of games played, points, assists, like statistical categories. He's up there for the Blues and everything. So
Yep, you got to tip the cap to that. So definitely a time when I wasn't watching, but I mean, those Suter brothers were pretty
pretty good.
pretty cray. My number 4 is their all-time goal scorer, in terms of points, and that's Bernie Federko.
Oh, okay.
1,073 points. Also the leader in assists all time. It's 721. And in 927 games, at an era, again, where penalty minutes were definitely up, he only had 463 penalty minutes. So give him that tip of the cap there as well for being somewhat responsible.
Yeah, he's a couple notches higher on my list, but
okay. And he was their captain for one season.
Yeah, which is kind of surprising. I mean, I would have pegged him to be a little bit more. But I mean, granted, Gordie Howe wasn't always the captain for the Wings either. But so there you go. For number 4 for me, the guy who just captained the Stanley Cup team, Alex Pietrangelo.
Okay.
Respectable guy. I think he's the same as Tarasenko, where I think the sky's the limit for this guy. His productivity is going to continue to rise, and I think
didn't make my list.
Didn't make your list.
No,
really.
Should have.
Could have. Absolutely. Yeah, I love this kid. His character's fantastic. I think he is a rock solid guy on the blue line right now.
And scored the Stanley Cup winning goal.
Yeah, and you should get his autograph.
I actually need to.
Yeah. You know, it's funny to me, early on in his career, you had the comparisons with Shattenkirk and which defenseman should the Blues keep because they were both coming up on contracts, and good freaking choice because clearly it's worked out pretty well for St. Louis, and I couldn't agree more.
It's about to work out for Shattenkirk, though, in Tampa Bay.
Dude, he's
about to find his
he's
place.
going to cash in.
Number 3 for me is Chris Pronger, a guy who had a little bit lower. I think in terms of an individual and as an individual defenseman, he had the best year as a St. Louis Blue, like an individual regular season, in terms of just his dominance. And I think in 1999-2000, he was the best player in the entire league. So I got it. Like, he's got to be higher on my list because he was so freaking good.
Yeah, he was freaking
just
good.
So freaking good and dominant. Unfortunately, they did actually win the President's Trophy that year too.
They did. That's correct.
They lost in the first round. Do you know who? 7 games to the 8th seed Blues. Sharks. Sharks. The Blues lost to the Sharks.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Number 3 for me, a guy that was a little further down your list, Bernie Federko. Kind of hard for me not to keep this guy out of my top 3 just because he is the franchise leader in points, games played, all those fun statistical categories except for goals. So
yeah, only 2 guys have more. 3 guys have a better points per game. And a couple of those guys didn't even play 200 games for the team. So
rock solid. And I mean, if you, again, I always emphasize that I don't really read into plus minus too much, but he was a minus, I think, like 123 in an era, again, where goal scoring was, freaking up and this team was just mediocre. So, number 3 for
where everyone was losing to the Oilers. My number 2 is Al MacInnis. I think we're going to probably have the same 2 here.
I think so.
Al MacInnis, he just didn't do enough to jump Brett Hull as number 1. Brett Hull had, freaking 85 goals, the third most goals in a season, right? Lemieux had an 86 goal season, I think.
Yeah. Oh, Brett Hull had an 86 goal season too.
Oh, it was 86.
Yeah. Yeah, Brett Hull was just freaking ridiculous. And that year he had 86 goals. He won the Hart, he won the Pearson. He was just, and I think he was better than his father. And
Lemieux had 85.
85, okay.
85 and Brett Hull had 86. The thing is though that Lemieux had 114 assists to go along with his 85 goals, whereas Hull had 45 assists.
Right. Well, Hull's playing on a St. Louis team that didn't have a whole lot of talent.
What was Adam Oates? Adam Oates was feeding them the puck all day long.
That's all he had, yeah. And Lemieux had, he had Yager and he had a whole bunch of other talented guys. But for me, Brett Hull, he's the consensus number 1. I've seen some lists where Federko is like, oh yeah, if you're from St. Louis, he's your number 1, but any fan outside of St. Louis puts Brett Hull.
Dude, I don't know, man.
It's so hard to argue against Brett Hull just because of what he did when he was there. When you have 370 plus goal seasons, why?
He averaged 0.7 goals a game. Like that's up there.
Yeah, he had the best point per game production for this team. Why?
Yeah, best goal production.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, MacInnis, reasonable number 2. I think guy freaking.
He was
amazing.
He did actually win a Norris, but he won it with Calgary.
Right. Yeah. Back in the 80s.
Yeah. But also
hardest
you just
shot.
Remember just an unreal shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He set the bar in those All-Star games where just you didn't see it get broke until Chara stepped up, and then you can make that argument too with composite sticks now that just it helps those guys, which I mean probably does, but yeah, Al McKenna
doing it with a wooden stick. Him and Al Iafrede. So.
Impressive.
All right, well, those are our lists. Find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Let us know how we did. Let us know if you agree or disagree, and we will continue our list. This time, we're going to leave it up to you.
Interesting.
The first person to tweet at us, give us some teams we haven't done, and we will do those 2 teams. So we'll look for it on Twitter, and we will talk to you guys very soon. We are, I think, about 30 days away from the NHL's preseason beginning.
It's getting there. I'm excited.
Here we go. Get ready, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.